What's up to all our sidekicks and henchmen out there in the Geek Nation? My name is Noel, and tonight we're going to do more than just a Thunder Round. I'm going to talk about some stories that I had been meaning to read for the longest time, never got around to, even though owning them, as you do, you buy things, you buy stories that you've always wanted to read, and they just kind of sometimes sit on the nightstand or the top of the shelf until you get around to them. I finally got around to these, and I'd like to talk about them, even if they are over 10 years old. Whatever. But before I do, I want to invite you guys to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for the channel. If you like what we do here, I'll leave all the links down below at the very end of our week or the beginning of our week, depending on. Every Sunday at 10:30, we live stream our podcast. They're called Pop Podcast, where we talk about this week's comics. We review a couple. We do a book club every month, and we talk about pop culture and things that are going on. Just last week, we talked about DC fandom and all the cool stuff that came out of that. Surprisingly, very little of it had to do with comic books. Either way, it was still exciting. There was some cool stuff, and invariably, it turned into an argument/discussion/ bitch session about the Snyder Cut, as most things do. But tonight I just finished reading this large saga of books. Not the book saga, just an actual saga of books. And I wanted to jump on right away and talk about my impressions fresh. So tonight I'm going to talk really quickly about Annihilation and Annihilation Conquest. I have the omnibuses here. There's Annihilation. About that big. Consists of 5 mini series of 4 issues each, a prologue issue, and the Annihilation event, which was 6 issues. It also has 2 issues at the end called Annihilation Heralds of Galactus, which act as like a coda. Ties up a couple loose ends when it comes to the actual heralds, which feature prominently in Annihilation. And I tonight literally 20 minutes ago finished Annihilation Conquest, which is structured similarly with minis, but it's actually buttressed by the Nova ongoing that launched at the same time. So this omnibus includes Nova 1 through 12 and the Nova Annual _1, the Annihilation Conquest prologue issue, and Annihilation Conquest Star-Lord 1 through 4, Annihilation Conquest Quasar 1 through 4, Wraith, Annihilation Conquest, Wraith 1 through 4, and Wraith, I guess, is coming back in regards to Venom and stuff. Stories. And Annihilation Conquest 1 through 6. This also reprints the Annihilation Saga, which is like a guidebook for all the characters and what had happened up until then. So yeah, I believe these are out of print. So this is not a video that's advocating like buy these omnibuses, because you can't right now unless you get them in secondary markets, which I did. So I had been meaning to read these, realized they weren't available anywhere, so I did get them in like buy sell trade groups over the last 2 years, and I just kind of sat at them until I finally felt inspired to read them. So if you had seen the previous Thunder Round where I talked a little bit about Annihilation as I had read it, I didn't love it that much, which was a shock to me because I had read pieces of Annihilation Conquest. I was madly, deeply in love with the Guardians of the Galaxy run by Abnett and Lanning, Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning, who are the architects of Guardians of the Galaxy, the Annihilation Conquest event, as well as essentially the originators of the modern Guardians of the Galaxy. The team that we know that's like on my wall, the idea of Star-Lord, Rocket, Groot, Gamora, Drax, that is them. You know, up until Abnett and Lanning, Guardians of the Galaxy was a completely different thing in the future. So I had always been a fan of these stories in theory, however, I never read them in their entirety. So I went back and I read Annihilation, and I was not as impressed as I was hoping. I can only explain it as like, let's say you get hooked on a TV show in like the 5th season, and you love it. So you go back and you watch seasons 1 through 4, and the first couple seasons are a little rough. The actors are younger and a little rustier. The plot lines are a little, they're not as tight, they're not as focused. Like, you could tell all the seeds of the things that you love are in there, but it's just not like firing on all cylinders. You know, it's like your favorite band, but their garage era. Like, it's there, but it's not really good yet. That was essentially almost all of Annihilation for me. I loved the event, but one of the 5 4-issue miniseries I enjoyed thoroughly. Everything else was either I really didn't like, or it was just very difficult to get through. So I gotta say that, like, Annihilation, this took me like 2 months to read slowly. I was juggling. I always juggle more than one book. I typically don't just binge one and not touch anything else, especially because we read weekly issues. This felt long, and I had to stop a couple times. I would very often I would lose momentum. So when it comes to recommendations, I don't know if I would recommend this to everyone. This is more for completionists. This is more for those friends of yours that just gotta read it all. But other than that, I would just tell anybody to just straight up skip to the Annihilation event. If they want more than that, the Nova miniseries, and that's it. Like, the Annihilation Conquest, or the Annihilation prologue issue, the Nova series, the event. That's 11 issues, as opposed to the 30 odd in here. It felt like a lot of fluff. It really did. So yeah, I'm sorry if that's a hot take. I know that this is very high regarded, but I didn't love it. So, that being said, the expectations going into Conquest were tempered. Even though I had read more of Conquest back in the day, as opposed to never having read anything of Annihilation, I was very afraid that this was going to be an instance of nostalgia, or I just was a different reader 10 years ago. I don't feel like doing the real math. But yeah, so I started it. I started Conquest. Decided to power through. And I loved it. This was everything I remembered, and it was so much better than Annihilation. This was more focused. It was more tuned. It was a stronger story, and I really do feel like it's because of how it was structured. This event was structured as around the Nova ongoing. So the first 12 issues of the Nova ongoing were a very important part of this event, and the overall telling of the story benefits from having a spine, having an actual event that or an ongoing that it's tied to, and not disparate pieces. Like, as cool as it is to have these little mini-series that are all across the galaxy and things that are all happening, if you don't, when there's not a clear enough connection to all of them other than just they're happening, they're like filler. They're like cutscenes. It's not telling a story. It's telling you everything but the story. Like, I'm cool with letting the reader fill in some gaps, but come on, after a while, it's just extras. Sometimes you want the main event, not just extras. So, Annihilation Conquest was a much more enjoyable process, and honestly, I read it in less than 2 weeks, and I know that there are some readers that or some people that habitually just like plow through an omnibus worth of stories within less than a weekend or a day because they just sit and hunker down and binge. I'm not that type of reader. I will usually juggle 2 to 3 or more different books, do a chapter at a time. Like, it's funny, when I go to bed to go read before I go to sleep, I've been made fun of. I'll carry like a giant stack of like 4 large books, not because I intend to read all of them sitting there in bed at once. It's because I'll do 1 or 2 chapters, put the one down, grab another one, and back and forth. With Annihilation, it was very easy to just stop reading that. With Conquest, I found myself eating 2 or 3 or 4 chapters at a time, because it was just a much more enjoyable process. This was a fun story. The things that I would praise the most are not necessarily pieces of the plot, but the style of the writing. So we have on the channel, on the podcast, all this stuff before. We've talked about a lot about the idea of writing for trade or writing for series, or what makes a single issue special, and it's all serialized storytelling, and everything should just be in trades. The format is dead and blah blah blah. This event, especially the Nova miniseries, or the Nova ongoing. Sorry, I keep doing that. The Nova ongoing by Abnett and Lanning is the perfect example of modern comic books told or presented as single issues. I had forgotten what it's like to read that until I reread this. Nowadays, it's like a get off my lawn type of thing. Now, the concept of deconstructed storytelling of very compacted stories stretched out and told over many issues, a lot of times when that's not done very well, it feels like you're constantly getting small pieces of a larger, better story. So reading one single issue is not necessarily satisfying, but reading an entire arc in one sitting is satisfying because you get the whole thing. The way that comics used to be written is, it is a larger macro story. It is a larger arc. However, they will end an issue on a closing point, a cliffhanger, something, and then the next issue will start not the very next second often, but it'll start in the middle of the next conflict. So like you'll have here an issue where Ultron shows up at the end and it's a splash page, and oh my god, what's going to happen next? Instead, like in a lot of modern comics, the very next issue, the very first panel is going to be a continuation of that second. But there are some comics, especially ones that are, from 10, 15 years ago and much earlier, because this is a trope, which will open the next issue with a completely different scene or a time jump or something that will make it accessible to new readers in the stands, right? So this feels story or very serialized, but in a very good way, almost like the old timey 10-cent serials, not the eating cereal, but the film serials where it's, we left our hero here and last time on, like, there is a very inviting, very old school, very appealing way in which these issues are constructed that I didn't know I missed until I started reading this. I love modern comics. I love single issues. I love deconstructed storytelling because there's a lot of my favorite stories are in that style. But there's value to this kind of old school way of stopping mid-scene and coming in mid-scene. Like, the most engaging stories, like, don't overstay their welcome and then jump back in the middle of a conversation, in the middle of a conflict, and it just hooks you. This whole omnibus is not unlike that. Like, it is a very specific style that Abnett and Lanning have that it all came flooding back when I had originally read the Guardians run and stuff. This was great. My overall recommendation is just read this. Like, people can literally just read this and having never read Annihilation. They make reference to it enough. They explain what it was enough. It's not a huge, super important thing. I'm sorry. It is super important. It's just, you could just read this and you would be fine. You would not be lost. For my completionists out there, Annihilation is not a waste of time. It's just got a lot of fluff. Conquest is just, not all of it is perfect, but goddamn, it's gold. This is just such a fun event. This is as close to super nostalgia for me in my comic reading lifetime. Like, I think every good comic book fan was into it when they were younger, like way younger, they went away for a long time, and then somewhere around high school or college, you got back in. Annihilation Conquest is definitely the second more mature phase of my reading, and I was very nostalgic by it as soon as it started, and I just couldn't put it down. This was wonderful. I would highly recommend Annihilation Conquest. Yeah, yeah, this was just great. I won't harp too much on it. I don't want to go through the plot of it because, I mean, that's just spoilers. But overall, the writing is on point. The story is very focused. Even the ancillary parts of the event tie into the structure of it. The climax it's a little anticlimactic. However, it's still incredibly engaging, and I really liked it. Even like there's deaths and resurrections and all kinds of stuff in here in the classic comic book way, and it leaves some things open that I didn't remember. You know, even though I had read everything that came after this, I don't remember any of it, and I likely will in the coming year. Read on. Like I will read into Abnett and Land, or the Guardians of the Galaxy run. I will likely read War of the Realms and Annihilators and all the other stuff that came after that before they kind of shuffled off prior to hitting it big and Bendis becoming the Guardians writer and blah blah blah. But after Annihilation, I was a little wary about reading through this whole cosmic run. After Conquest, I'm back in. I'm gonna read it and I'm gonna like it, I hope. Either way, this was fun and I would highly recommend it. But yeah, I won't, like, I just spent 15 minutes with you guys. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. If you like what we do on the channel, be sure to like and subscribe. I'll leave all the links on the bottom. We don't do edits here. I probably would have cut to much better pieces of me talking, but that's not fun. It's not fun. Yeah, like and subscribe, hit the links. I'll see you Sunday morning. Join us for the conversation. It's super fun, 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. We're going to talk about comics. Leave some, talk to us live while we're doing it. If you missed it, you could watch it here on YouTube, or you could download wherever you get your podcast. That's called Pop Podcast, Spoiler Alert, and Gutter Talk. That's pretty much all I got. Maybe later this week we'll do some Thunder Rounds on the issues that came out this week. There's some good stuff. 3 Jokers. But other than that, I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you for spending time with me. Bye.